Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1957. Against the odds, growing up in Harlem during the Depression, she became the first black woman to win Wimbledon. Althea Gibson was a troubled child, but she was very athletic and found solace in swatting balls against a wall for hours. Just 1 year after her first tennis lesson, Althea won the 1942 New York State Open. In 1948, Althea won 9 Negro tennis competitions, but continued to struggle for the right to play against white opponents. Despite the rampant racism, Althea sought out prominent supporters and succeeded. Althea Gibson rose through the ranks until finally in 1957 and 58, she changed the precedent and won the most prestigious tournament, Wimbledon, in both singles and doubles. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 5000 BC. It is a plant that does not grow naturally in the wild. Over centuries of careful cultivation, it transformed from a tall grass to the juicy vegetable useful for so many things: corn. Scientists believe that early development of corn began in central Mexico over 7,000 years ago. Known as maize to Native Americans, meaning she who sustains us, corn turned nomadic tribes into agrarian communities. Today, corn starch thickens foods and is used in biodegradable plastics. Ethanol from corn alcohol is used in car fuel. Corn syrup is used in candy and baking as a sweetener. And nearly 50% of all corn crops are used for animal feed. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1401. Fendi, Hermes, Louis Vuitton, Coach, Dior. The list goes on and on for fashion's most sought-after accessories, handbags. Purses and bags are part of the outfit. The handbag a woman carries defines her style. Young girls of the 1800s were taught embroidery as a marriageable skill, and consequently, beautiful, dainty stitched purses were carried. Fashionable ladies of this time began carrying reticules or small handbags, a different bag for every occasion. The Roaring Twenties saw a revolution in boyish fashion, and handbags shrunk from the scene. But with the post-war boom in the 1950s, major fashion houses such as Chanel, Hermes, and Dior were established, bringing back the glamour of accessories. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1907. Madonna, Marilyn Monroe, Venus de Milo. Going back through history, blondes have made a strong impact. Men and women have desired the mystique and stunning quality of shiny blonde tresses for centuries. Many lathered soaps in their hair and sat in the sun for hours to lighten its hue. In 1907, a French chemist formulated the first hair dye and called it L'Oréal. But the bleaching process was still unsafe at this time, as the chemicals caused headaches, burning, and sometimes the hair would fall out. Hollywood discovered that blonde sheen looked very glamorous on black and white film. But Hollywood tarnished the blonde beauty by depicting her as an easy woman, naughty and naive. Nowadays, anyone can safely become a blonde and truly find out if blondes do have more fun, as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1907. Red, blonde, pink, green. Today, anything goes. With celebrities changing hair color every season, dyeing your hair has become a form of expression. Coloring one's hair goes back to Egyptian times. Cleopatra herself dyed her hair with henna and indigo. In Elizabethan times, women used a more natural way of lightening, by lying in the sun with their tresses soaked in urine. In 1907, a French chemist named Eugene Schuller invented the first synthetic hair dye and called it L'Oréal. This product was better, yet with overuse would cause burning and sometimes hair would fall out. Today, anyone can safely be a brunette, a redhead, a blonde, or go tiger stripe depending on the impression you want to make, as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1888. It spawned out of the brothels of the turn of the century. It is the dance of sorrow, revenge, and passion. It is the tango. In the late 1880s, immigrants from Europe, Africa, and all over the world filled the outskirts of Buenos Aires. These lonely men drowned their sorrows dancing with the prostitutes of Argentina. The tango performed not only the choreography of a sexual encounter, but also a fight to the death for the possession of a woman. When the rich European travelers returned home with the tango in the early 1910s, it took Paris by storm. This in turn elevated the dance in Argentinian high society. The music and choreography of the tango has transformed over the decades, constantly reinvented by professional dancers in world-class competitions, as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1624. It is a sport, a martial art, a dance, a game, and a creative expression. Capoeira. Beginning in the 15th century, African people became a commodity in world trade and were shipped as slaves to newly discovered European settlements. In Brazil, during the Dutch invasions of 1624 to 1630, hundreds of slaves escaped and built communities in the forests. It was here the slaves realized they must defend themselves with their own bodies. So they began practicing this tribal fusion of fight and dance to a homeland beat. Capoeira was banned in Brazil in 1890 for 38 years when Master Bimba founded Capoeira Regional, a blend of Angola and street styles. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1489. During the Renaissance in Tortona, Italy, Berganzio de Botta staged elaborate dances called entrees during a feast in honor of a duke's marriage. Men and women dressed in contemporary court costumes performed what is decidedly the first ballet ever that night. Ballet gained popularity from this point on, with major ballet companies established in Paris, St. Petersburg, and London. Until the 19th century, ballets focused on Greek mythological themes, then transitioned to human tragedies and otherworldly imagery. In the pre-Romantic era around 1805, ballerinas first began to dance en pointe in the traditional costume of calf-length gauzy skirts and bare shoulders. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1920. Despite common understanding, women have been wearing trousers throughout history. Challenging tradition, rebel women who were farmers, factory workers, cowgirls, athletes, and bold businesswomen wore pants for functional reasons and to align themselves with men. The major revolution in acceptance of women's trousers came in the early 20th century with World War I and the advent of major fashion houses like Coco Chanel. With American men off to fight, women went to work in war effort factories and adopted overalls as a practical uniform. Fashion mirrored women's new societal role with the choice to wear short skirts or masculine pantsuits, which Hollywood heroines like Marlene Dietrich made famous. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1964. Congas and cowbells push out a contagious rhythm as trombones and voices sound out the sensual melody. It's hot, it's spicy, it's salsa. The origin of the dance is debatable, but salsa is certainly a Cuban fusion of Spanish country dances, Creole jives, African rhythms, and jazz. The word salsa, meaning saucy in Spanish or slang for kick it up, appropriately represented the melding of mambo, cha-cha, merengue, Latin boogaloo, and many more. After 1959, immigrants from Puerto Rico and Cuba settled in New York and Miami and set the night on fire, creating a Latin music revival. Today, the music and dance steps continue to evolve as salsa spreads and picks up influences along the way, as we look back and travel through history.